Welcome to the 217 podcast, presented by Decatur Earthmover Credit Union and hosted by me, Jess Younghouse. In the podcast, we're going to talk about the Decatur community and the people that make it great. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the 217 podcast, Kyle. You're close to the end of our season here, so we're a little bit into it, and we've gotten to know a lot of great people in the Decatur community, and so I'm excited to have you here, the Director of Development for the Salvation Army. So to start, let's just talk a little bit about how you got to Decatur and why you stick around.
It's a great question and easy answer.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me say, too, this is super cool.
Thanks.
So I've been kind of watching pictures and different videos that you guys have been sharing, and this is really cool.
Awesome.
So thank you for including us.
Yes.
So, Decatur, Illinois. I've now lived in Decatur the longest I've ever lived in my adult life.
I didn't know that fun fact.
I know. So I've lived here and worked here for 14 years, and I've never stayed in one particular spot longer than 10 years prior to coming into Decatur. So I came to Decatur 14 years ago to be part of education and superintendent and principal of the Lutheran School Association. And that was 14 years ago, and I stayed with them 7 years. And I always came out of the gate to, even when I first bought my house, I'm here to serve Decatur. I'm going to buy a house in Decatur. I wasn't going to go outside of Decatur. And I wanted to serve Decatur and serve God. And the Lutheran School Association allowed me to do that. And a huge blessing to my family. My kids got a great education there, wonderful sports opportunity. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen now in Decatur is I love the community. So now I've been at the 7 years with the Salvation Army. And so now, people have asked, are you going to stick around? Your kids are all, grown up and moved on, and a lot of them have met their significant others here in Decatur, so that's a huge side note blessing from being here. But I just love the community, and to serve the community in this community, that's why I stay in Decatur.
Sure.
I'm not looking to go anyplace soon.
Yeah, so I know the Lutheran community more than most people, as my husband is also a called worker at the Lutheran School Association, and so whenever you leave one school, you typically stay in the Lutheran education circle. You move to another congregation that needs your service. And so that you stayed here in Decatur and pursued another career outside of Lutheran ministry is kind of a testament, I think, to the community that maybe a lot of people don't know that little bit of backstory.
That's well said. That's well said. The reason I moved around with my wife and then now with my kids, and now if I would ever move again, it would have been in the Lutheran school system.
Sure.
And, we believe that God puts us where he wants us to be, and certainly through the Lutheran school system, that was true.
Yep.
But we were faced with, now I'm not going to stay in education, or if I'm going to stay in education, I'm leaving Decatur. And that was kind of where, God had us in our journey in life. And we looked at each other and said, we love it here.
Yeah.
Our kids like it here. They're settling here still. They were in school at the time. And so, I could have got out of Dodge, right? I could have just bolted, here's my chance to go do something different someplace else. We didn't choose to do that.
Yeah.
I really, truly love this community.
Yeah.
And to be able to do what we do and do it now for 14 years, and I say with, my occupation, vocation in mind there, to go into relationships, just genuine relationships of doing things together.
Sure.
Running into people who value the same things that you do in the community, who respect you and that we have gotten to know along the way through the school system, through the churches, through Salvation Army and businesses, Decatur Earth Mover Credit Union.
Sure.
What an amazing partner for, for the Salvation Army, with the Salvation Army. All of those things together, you said it right. I had a chance to leave Decatur, and I do not look back and see it as nothing but a great decision.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Love it.
Tell me a little bit about what we'll get into the Salvation Army in just a second.
Sure.
But what other community ties? What other organizations do you work with? Do you serve in?
Well, definitely has given me a chance to see others' social services and support them. There's a lot of partnerships with other social services, Good Samaritan Inn, Northeast Community Fund, the list goes on, that we're doing things together. We're valuing each other. We're rowing the boat in the same direction and serving the community, together. So I've gotten a chance to know a lot of the social service leaders and teams. I've gotten to know what they do and how we can come alongside them and they us to get it done.
Yeah.
So social services for sure. Churches.
Yeah.
To get to know a lot of different churches. I was very tied to the Lutheran churches when I was at the school, but to get to know people and to get to know others in other Christian churches has been unbelievably positive for me. Yeah. Not just for, what I do with the Salvation Army. Yeah. And that is, I believe, just the path that God has laid out in front of me too. Definitely churches, definitely social services, but the businesses that just really care so much about the community and see what, again, the Salvation Army does, and then they come alongside us as volunteers, as donors. You really just look at, and this, you can go into a restaurant or you go into, some event in the community, and how many people you get to just run into. It's just so fun.
When people come visit us from college or out of town and we go out anywhere, they're like, who are you here? Why do you know so many people? And part of it's from being here and living here for so long. But it is when you're in a position to serve, I think like we serve, the connections there's so many people that you get to know and work alongside.
Your business becomes social, your social becomes business.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's just what we do and where we do it now.
Talk a little bit about the community food drive. That's been not around here for a couple years, but it was a huge thing for businesses. You were involved probably when you were at LSA with kids bringing food in for the food drive and that kind of thing. And then to move on to the Salvation Army, who was a huge beneficiary of the food drive. What impact did that have to the Salvation Army? And then does it hurt to not have it now?
Yeah, let me talk about the community first. That was an event that was one of the most incredible things and nationwide known things that you'd ever come across. To have that many people come together for that reason, around WSOY and their partnership, their leadership. It was an incredible event that is just a testament to this community. It's a testament to coming together, working together. It's a giving, caring community, and I think the event itself encompassed Decatur, not just an event in Decatur. There's no question that it benefited the programs, the food pantries that helped to pass on that benefit to people who need food. And so, that was why we could do a food pantry. And then really that last year before they stopped doing it, they went big and they set all these pantries up, most of the pantries up for a couple years. So you couldn't do what we do in the pantry without that. And thankfully those dollars are still there, but they're not going to be here forever. And so that's the other part of your question. What do we do? Well, what did we do before it? We all came together and said there's a need. and let's meet the needs so that we can meet needs.
Sure.
And we're going to need to have that conversation. Yeah. Is it a repeat of the WSOI food drive? Not necessarily, but we can't bury our head in the sand and not plan something for the future so that we're prepared to continue to feed people if they need our help.
Yeah.
So there's a huge benefit. And one of these years, it's going to need to be a conversation. You know, a lot of the partners that believe in the addressing hunger, you know, the food provisions, like an ADM as an example, they're still here. And they were huge partners with the WSOI food drive. And they still have a mission of relieving hunger. So there are conversations, certainly, that take place every year from organizations like that. And our ongoing fundraising, while we don't ring the bell at Christmas, you know, for the food pantry, we're also supplying dollars toward the food pantry because we ring bells too. So overall fundraising for the Salvation Army is going to still be able to address the no food drive moment. I mean, we're not going to be hurting. We're not going to be in a position where we can't feed people. But that WSOI money, that food drive money, was a huge blessing. That is not a year by year thing anymore.
Sure. Okay. You've been at Salvation Army for 7 years, you said. You've been the director of development the whole time.
Right.
What led you to the Salvation Army?
Well, the job change. You know, that's a journey that's just been part of my faith journey, family journey, vocation journey. Again, I needed to have something in order to be employed when I stopped working at the school. And so one of the things that is still a God thing is this opportunity opened up. And so for Salvation Army, you know, hey, would you ever want to be the director of development here? I don't know. Tell me about it. You know, what is it? But I got a 7-year head start to do what I'm doing now for now another 7 years. And so really the job opened up, the opportunity opened up, and little did I know what a neat vocation this was going to be.
So tell a little history about the Salvation Army. Like, it's been around forever. I mean, just us young people, it's forever.
I know, right? Yeah.
There's lieutenants who oversee the community Salvation Armies wherever they are. So just how does it all work?
Well, so it's kind of a Jeopardy question, you know, that we're waiting to happen. So the founder of the Salvation Army back in the early 1800s, in London, England. It was a Methodist pastor who stepped out and said, you know, I'm not just going to do ministry in my building. I'm going to do ministry out on the street. And his goal, William Booth, was to feed and shelter those that are in poverty. Okay. And then that expanded to other people helping him. Thus, the Christian Mission was born. That's the name that it used to be before it was the Salvation Army. Okay. And then the Salvation Army name attached to it a little bit later. Long story short, 1800s, it comes across the ocean to the United States in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York area. And then all of a sudden, we're in 170 different languages worldwide now. Yeah. So 1888 is when the Salvation Army started here in Decatur. 1888. So what is that, 135 some years ago? And so it's been doing very similar to what it does today for that many years. Okay. Feeding people, making sure that you know, that people don't have a place to live, or at least kept safe, if not, you know, allowed to have a path towards self-sufficiency. Okay. And there's a wealth of history with the Salvation Army. I mean, I think people have come to know, I think hopefully a lot of what it does, but I know we're going to talk about the specifics here in a little bit. Yeah. I think when people know about the Salvation Army, I think maybe especially, you know, generations like our parents and grandparents who can speak to the Salvation Army being in World War I and World War II and being on the front lines, serving in that way, to be there for, you know, for physical needs and moral and even spiritual needs at that time. Sure. It's a Christian organization. I think that's a big secret. It's motivated by Jesus' love for us.
Sure.
And the mission is to meet human needs without discrimination in his name. So it's very scripturally based. And I do remember when I was interviewing for the job, I knew enough about it to say some, but I didn't know anything like I do now today. And one of my biggest things was I need to be at a place where I can be passionate, where I can share my faith.
Sure.
And the officer at the time, we'll talk about the officers you mentioned, the officer at the time said, do you know that we're a church first and then we're a social service second? And I go, no, I didn't. So he went out and pulled out the hymnal and looked at the first 3 pages of the hymnal at some of the things that they believe and they stand for. And oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there's a
solid Christian organization.
There's a service at Salvation Army downtown every Sunday.
Every Sunday. So our officers are pastors. They're pastors in the Universal Christian Church and officers in the Salvation Army. And when they came up with the name and the concept of Salvation Army, they adopted a lot of what the military does in terms of, your lieutenants start, and then after a few, years or, whatever guidelines that need to be followed, and then you're a captain, then you're a major, and so on and so forth. And so there's a territorial headquarters in Virginia. And then there's 4 territories, basically north, south, east, west. Goes into a little more detail than that. But then those regional territories oversee then the state territories and then down to the local level like we have here in Decatur, Illinois. So it's a massive, impressive organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I say impressive because it's not just what they do, it's how they do it. They're the forward thinking, the efficiency and effectiveness that is just literally nationwide and worldwide. It's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, staying on top of keeping people fed and giving people shelter for as many years as that's been is an impressive feat, absolutely. Let's talk about the most obvious thing. I mean, I think everybody knows Salvation Army for bell ringing.
Sure. So let's just talk Christmas. I want the listeners to, I know it's February or whenever you're listening to this, but I want you to think about Christmas. I do. Christmas isn't just, toys, special food, bell ringing. Christmas sets up the Salvation Army for a good portion of the year to come so that we can meet needs at a moment's notice. The fundraising that we do in November and December is an unbelievable testament to the community, but it's so important. It's not just fundraising. It's being in a position to help people. You can't just go out and do a fundraiser when you have, I guess we need some money for the food pantry, so let's go do a fundraiser. The intentionality of Christmas and even the history of the red kettle is an amazing part of that. To prepare for the year to come it's really important to be in that position. We talk about bell ringing, so it's the red kettles. Do you know the history of the red kettle?
Not really.
It's pretty cool.
I probably heard it, but
so there was an officer named Joseph McPhee in San Francisco, California, and back in the 1800s. He wanted to just raise a few dollars for a Christmas meal for those in poverty. Okay, people that don't have family, don't have the means to have a special Christmas. All he wanted to do was feed these people. So he takes a red crab pot and he hangs it on a stand at the corner and asks people to keep the pots boiling, meaning let's just donate a couple dollars here, and what we're going to do with it is feed the people in need this Christmas. And thus the red kettles were born. And so, movies and songs.
I mean, pretty famously,
every time you turn
Marv
around, you can hear Silver Bells, right?
Yes.
Silver Bells is a song that references the Salvation Army. It's Christmas time in the city when you start hearing Silver Bells.
Yes.
So it is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think Marv from Home Alone sticking his sticky bandit's hand and get the change from the red kettle.
Yeah.
Iconic.
The the first year I worked for Salvation Army, we're watching Christmas Vacation.
Yep.
And my kids were watching it with me, and they're like, "Dad, did you see that red kettle?" I'm like, I'd watched that movie 1,000 times and never noticed the red kettle, and now that's all we noticed. So it is pretty neat, that history of the red kettles, but it's Christmas.
Sure.
Christmas is a special time. It's motivated to make Christmas special. So toys are donated.
Sure.
Angel trees are set up. This community responds in an unbelievable way.
Yeah.
And then we partner with other agencies to take applications. Families that wouldn't necessarily have had a special Christmas because of all of our efforts at Christmas time can have a special Christmas, it's extra dollars to create Christmas for our families. Well, if you don't have the dollars to meet your day-to-day needs, you definitely don't have the dollars to create a Christmas.
Yeah.
And so I've talked with people whose families used to have Salvation Army when they were kids. Now they're adults and even grandparents, so they have been blessed and they pay it forward now.
Yeah.
So toys collected, toys given out, special Christmas food assistance. I think that comes back to San Francisco and the red kettle orientation. But then it's red kettles. Those dollars, significant dollars. We had a $75,000 matching gift to every dollar that was put in that kettle this year.
That's major.
That was a huge blessing.
Yeah,
to help us meet our goal. And so we set a lofty goal. I met with the donor a couple years ago, and I see that you raised your goal. I go, the need is greater.
Yeah.
And I think he appreciated hearing that. And I'm not a proponent for let's just keep raising this number. It's a huge endeavor to hit to position us to help people. But the need is there.
Yeah.
It's not a number that we pull out of the sky.
Right.
And every dollar we raise, but every hour that a volunteer rings a bell is so personally important. It's not just come out and ring bells for the Salvation Army. I want people to hear this. We had 800 unmanned bell ringing hours this year. It's the most I've ever had since working here. And I've had conversations like, why is that? Why is that? I've got some different theories that I think are fact and at least hyperbole. But I'm telling you, 800 hours at $50 an hour-ish, that's a lot of money that we didn't get a chance to raise, and thus we don't have to help people. Now, we met our goal. Thank goodness for that.
What was the goal for 2022?
$600,000 this year again, $600,000. So mail appeals and events, mail appeals, events, the red kettles, just general donations that come in, foundations were huge. Big, small, everything in between, $600,000.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it really is. But I think it's people that understand and trust what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And understand how important it is. And we don't even know what that next need is yet, but we're in a position to help.
Good.
Yeah.
Red kettles, check. What are some of the other, I guess not other, but what are some of the services that the Red Kettles help fund throughout the year? So we've talked a little bit about food pantry already, I guess. What are the other main areas of focus? I guess it's shelter.
Well, I think it's important also to say, as much as we raise at Christmas, that doesn't cover the entire year. Okay. So when we say, okay, Christmas, you guys must be set. We're set for a while.
Yeah.
We're set for a good portion of the year, but we doesn't get us all the way to the next Christmas. But next Christmas is super important too. So that's why I want everybody to be thinking about their bell ringing right now, right?
Yes.
Mid-year fundraiser.
Okay.
Golf outing.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yep.
And you guys have been awesome to come out and help with it and sponsor at it and play at it. Golf outing, mid-year fundraiser, super important then to say the need is all year long. And those dollars at Christmas and those dollars at golf outing really do kind of bring the year together.
Okay.
Super cool.
Yep.
And what does it do? Why do we do that? It's our programs. So it's feeding people. It's sheltering people that need that kind of help. It's emergency assistance.
Okay.
It's someone who was affected by a tornado in Taylorville. Salvation Army was there.
Okay.
It was a couple years ago, right? we don't get a lot of those national things like tornadoes and, some of the flooding and, the hurricanes, the forest fires, but our other Salvation Armies are responding to that. And if they needed to expand it into Decatur, Illinois, we could actually be deployed to go and help with those things. But it's emergency services locally. It's an emergency that keeps the heat on in the middle of winter. And a utility bill can't be paid. And they've worked with the city, and the city is great to work with them, and Amory's great to work with them, but you can't, hold that out forever and ever and ever, so it does need to get paid. We can help with that. I wish we could help as many times as the help is needed, but we're there to see if we can help or help in other ways. Other emergencies that could be is evictions, right? So now you're back pay, you're owing money on your rent or your mortgage, and you're on the brink of losing your home. So you're not homeless, but you're going to become homeless. So we call that homeless prevention.
Okay.
Let's make sure that we keep the heat on, the air conditioning on, the family in the home, because it's a bigger challenge if everything's turned off or if they don't have a home, at all. So emergency assistance. Food, we talked about the food pantry. Our pantry has gone to a client choice that they can come in and pick what they want, what they need. And that cuts down on waste. And, if somebody handed you a box of food, all your kids aren't going to eat everything in that box. Right. But if you could have the box and you could fill it with what you want and need, dietary restrictions and the like, that's super important. Shelter comes in a big way with our men's shelter. Okay. Our men's shelter is probably one of the biggest sets of numbers that we see as our impact over the course of month after month, and we put it together in a 2022 impact report that has come out, and we're starting to share. But hundreds of men throughout short-term, medium-term, long-term stays, not just shelter, not just food, but restoring hope, just restoring dignity, restoring confidence, love for humanity around them. So many things come from just helping with that shelter. But we've now gone to a 24-hour men's shelter, meaning we're not just having dinner, stay the night, eat breakfast, come back for dinner the next day. We're sitting down with them even more intentionally and trying to get them to where self-sufficiency is what we see. So let's help them get their own jobs. Let's help them get their own homes, apartments, whatever that looks like. And let's partner with those organizations that are starting to already do those things, that are and have been already doing those things. We call that program now Pathway Forward. Pathway Forward is getting guys where they are, needs met, but getting them where they need to be, and partnering with a lot of agencies throughout the community to get that done.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that that's so important for people, for donors to hear, that it's not just always giving a can of food or giving a bed for a night, but making people's lives better for the long term and maybe even generationally better.
And that's the goal. And one of the biggest things I heard when I started working here 7 years ago is, we just, all we do is do handouts. I go, we're meeting needs, but they're not handouts, they're hand-ups. Because we try to say, okay, where are we at? What else can we do? How can we plug you into some of these, more intentional, I'm going to say longer-term programs to where we can get you to where you don't need our help here, hopefully shortly. One of those programs is the men's shelter I just mentioned, but also Pathway of Hope. Pathway of Hope is working with singles and families to help break the cycle of poverty for multiple generations. So you got a single mom with 4 kids who's struggling, that needs to spend 6 to 9 months with us to turn her or his weaknesses into strengths and help them create a lifestyle that someone helped us create. Someone helped us,
Yep.
be on time and
Yeah.
know what to do at an interview
Yeah.
and to manage a budget. Maybe we all still struggle with that.
I mean, being on time.
Yeah, right. But a single mom who can't make ends meet, their kids don't have a chance or have
Right.
less of a
Sure.
chance. And so we want to break that poverty cycle for the entire family. Andrea does a great job with our Pathway of Hope families. EUL and his team do a wonderful job connecting with our men at the men's shelter, trying to, again, restore hope, create relationships to get them to self-sufficiency. I'll mention what took place at the time of the pandemic. Okay, so we were doing it couldn't have been any, I'm going to say, more crazy, but it did get more crazy. It wasn't just the pandemic.
Sure.
We had a serious remodel going on in our men's shelter where we had to now open up the men's shelter in our gym.
Oh, okay.
During the pandemic.
Okay.
So we had, shelter in place. We all had something that was someone we knew or it was us. Where does a homeless man go? Where do 35 homeless men go? Because when you had to shelter in place, I believe your entire family then had to shelter in place because they had been around you. Well, guess whose family was around them? 35 men or more. During the winter, it was even more because our cold cots open up.
Yeah.
Some of that short-term just keep the guys alive has always taken place every winter, but think about it during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so when we spent more time with these guys, we actually developed more and better relationships with them. Nobody thought that was going to come out of the pandemic, but we all can look at the pandemic and say, gosh, that's kind of cool that came out of that. That was one of them.
That's awesome.
That was one of them. And when we spent more time, that means they trusted us more. We were able to spend more time with trying to get case management in place to where now your track, your eventual 24-hour program called Pathway Forward is going to start with this step on your pathway forward. And when we spent more time with them during the pandemic, more got done.
Yep.
What a concept, right? Instead of people just coming and going.
What a blessing in disguise.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
So through crazy pandemic times, some of these things were born.
That's awesome.
And so when you look at all of those programs together, it's meeting immediate needs, but it's saying to them, to us, how can we help you? How can we help your family? How can we help you get to where, you can come and get past some of these challenges that landed you here to need us now, but that you're then going to be able to stand on your own. This Pathway Forward is now graduating guys.
Yeah.
Again, our 2022 impact report had 288 men that came through the shelter last year, and 116 were in the cold cots. We helped 45 find employment and 58 find their own homes. And so that's huge.
Yep.
It's not just a handout like those community members asked me about when I first started working here. It really does go so much further than just that immediate need being met.
Yeah, so 1,800 families served over the course of the year. How many people are employed at Salvation Army here in Decatur?
20. I know.
20
Some
people.
Some of them are part-time with people in the shelter.
Families.
And, it's a duplicated number. You might have a family that came to our pantry, and that same family was in Pathway of Hope, and that same family came through our youth program and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot of impact taking place.
Absolutely.
And, 20 of us just kind of doing what we can do, right?
So where
Good
can
percentage.
people find where can people find this impact report? We have it here, but where do people find it?
So I'm actually going to post this exact front and back
because it's
on
important
our social media.
Okay, it's important for people to see numbers of what truly is the impact.
So true story, I actually emailed my contact list of the bell ringers this week and sent that out to them. And I hope that they'll see it, remember why they came out and rang bells. Remember that is the difference it'll make next Christmas. But share it with your team, right?
Yeah.
Share it with somebody. As you think about getting plugged in, you know, come and talk to us about this.
Yeah.
Let us come in and present this to your business or your church or your school team or whatever that looks like. Help us to share these numbers. We've already started to share bits and pieces of this on our social media. And I really hope people kind of pick up on our social media too.
Yeah.
We've got Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we have a lot of fun, you know, sharing what's coming up, sharing the difference that, you know, our support together makes, and sharing things that are, you know, are taking place in the community. It's worthwhile to follow.
Sure.
But we would love to then get this in people's hands. February is also going to be my outreach to past businesses that have been Kettle Club members and you know, specifically at the golf outing as part of Christmas sponsorships. Those businesses are going to get a copy of this emailed to them too.
Yeah.
And anybody that's listening, like, hey, I want a copy of that. You know, we'll have it in a number of ways where we can get it to it. On the front, it just kind of gives you a little picture, but then on the back, it goes into even more detail. And it starts to talk about not just what we did for 2022, but the history of the men's shelter is pretty fascinating. Like literally hundreds and hundreds of men that have been helped since, I think, 2008 when we got into that new building.
It's awesome.
So, yeah.
So golf outing is the the second Friday of August?
It is. So it's August 11th this year.
August 11th.
Yep, August 11th.
Okay.
Red Tail Run has been super to work with, and I love, you know, local, and that's supporting local for us as people support local with us.
When can people expect to be able to sign up for that?
Well, we could get them information right now. Yeah.
How do people contact you?
Yeah, so my email or phone number or through our social media, I'm at the other end of those. So Kyle.Karsten at usc.salvationarmy.org. It's the longest email you've ever heard.
That's okay.
We can get that out to them.
Maybe we can.
But just stop by, you know, or you know, come up to me at Rotary or send a message, you know, 428-4672, and just say, hey, I'm a little intrigued about getting involved or having someone come and speak to us. I love when our officers can do that. Yeah. And they love doing that.
Yep.
This past week, we went over to Making Resources. Making Resources was one of our bell ringing groups this year. We employed friends of MRI. And you want to talk about fun. And then Lieutenant Canessa and I got to go over there. That's just one group. Yeah. And it was a paid employee relationship. But they're looking for ways to be employed, and we needed bell ringers. If we don't have a volunteer, does the community know that we actually pay people to ring? You know, maybe there's somebody listening that wants a 2-month seasonal job next year. And, you know, we need as many volunteers as we need paid ringers. So, again, when we can come out and bring our officers, be out in the community, just share and talk about what we do, and really about how the group can maybe get plugged in with helping us.
Yeah. So what volunteer opportunities, what are some of the bigger ones outside of bell ringing that you have throughout the year that really are needs that you could benefit from?
We talk a lot about providing food. And so one of the biggest things that we talk about all year long is the availability at our food pantry. Okay. So Tuesday and Wednesday evenings, after work is over, we intentionally went to those hours so that people that are working who need to go to a pantry can stop by our pantry. We have tons of pantries that are open during the day, but they're not after work hours. But I think that's true of volunteers. Now, maybe it's the last thing you want to go do after you get off of work, but our pantry used to be open in the morning and everybody's working. Yeah, so it kind of cuts into your volunteers too. So I think there's going to be a win-win situation for people who want to come, or on Saturday morning. Okay. So we're open on Saturday morning. So our business hours for volunteers and our business hours for those that need to come to our pantry are out the window. because it's after hours now,
Yep.
2 evenings
Yep.
and 1 Saturday morning. So volunteer to come and just help us stock our shelves.
Okay.
It's like, we need and want those grocery stores to stock those shelves as we walk through. Well, we are doing that at our pantries so that our clients can come through and pick what they want. Feeding people theme continues, though, because we make and serve a meal every evening and every morning to the guys at the shelter.
Okay.
Bring 3 or 4 people. Now, I don't need 25 people in the kitchen making breakfast for the shelter guys, but 3 or 4. Take Decatur Earth Mover Credit Union and bring us teams of 3 every Tuesday. We're coming to help serve dinner. We feed youth 3 times a week at our youth programs. So come and help prepare and serve the meals that we're actually now providing for families, their kids, probably 50 to 60 kids a month that are getting a meal that way. We also have a Sunday morning breakfast open to the community. Again, it's just kind of hopefully it's the families that just need that extra meal or that warm place of fellowship. So come and help us prepare and serve a meal. So food related all year long is probably the biggest volunteer opportunity. But don't forget about Christmas. It's seasonal, but it's super, super important. Come out and ring bells.
When do you start getting volunteers for bell ringing?
So September and October, we'll start really talking about it. Because our stores will give us the official, hey, we have a national contract in place, and we start kind of the scheduling. But I'm telling you, and you're one of them. You come out of the gate early and say, look, I want these dates because I want these locations, right?
Yes.
So come September, October, people could contact me and we could start, before I even build the registertoring.com is where people sign up. But before that even goes live, we can come back and say, look, Decatur Earth Mover Credit Union's already got Tuesday and Saturday, these 2 dates in December, and we can get some of those locked in. Why do we do that? Well, it's helpful for you guys too.
Sure.
Because if you're going to get those hours manned and assigned, your people available, you're going to want to know that date early. I'm going to want to know that date early. There may be only certain days and locations that work for you.
Sure.
But I would love to talk to churches more this year. We had 4 or 5 churches that never rang for us until this year who came and rang 3 and 4 different times. They brought
awesome.
groups out. So businesses, schools.
Individuals can contact you, right?
Individuals.
Yeah, individual families can just say, I want my kids to ring bells. They're not going to have an opportunity here.
And how many kids need service hours?
A bunch of them.
That's a perfect time, right? It's a perfect time to do that. I think though, if you get on our registertoring.com, you're going to see 5-hour shifts. Okay. The idea there is instead of me finding 5 people to each do an hour, would Just Young House find 5 people to take that as a group and then just rotate people through? I'm not asking for one person to stand there for 5 hours. That's a long time, quite frankly. Some people do it, but I don't think it's necessarily what we want to do. Do you want to come out for just 2 hours? We can build that in, but we really want to be intentional about kind of when and how we do that. Because we're constantly changing kettles all day. 10 different spots. And so if a family could partner with another family and each take 2 hours, 2.5 hours, now you got it set. So that's what we're asking people to consider. Volunteer bell ringing is number one, so important. And I think if anybody would do anything at Christmas, that's probably the greatest need. Because it's the most important.
How would you encourage young people to step out and get involved? I mean, when you have what's the age demographic of people that are ringing bells?
Well, we ring bells while you're working. So who rings during your work? It's businesses that are going to let young professionals do and be. I would tell businesses, if you want to encourage young people and support your community and support nonprofits like Salvation Army, carve it out during the day.
Sure.
Give them 2 hours of release time on the clock.
Yep.
And let them go ring bells. That's a win-win-win-win situation.
Absolutely.
So young people maybe need to go to their bosses and say, hey, what if we would do this too? Because I think there's initiative in young listeners right now that would say, you know what, I think we could plug in there. What if I took some conversation to my boss or leadership and do that? I think young people are looking for, what can I do? You know, how can I make a difference? We've mentioned 100 things today, but come and talk more. You want to go deep? Let me talk to you about what we do and why we do it and how you could plug in. Because that young listener today also has a youth group at church or a circle of friends at the fraternity or you know, a place at your business or a place at your, you know, your college team. Who are you connected with that you could be the champion, that you could be the student leader, the young adult leader, and get something in place that could make a difference now and could be around, you know, as a as an ongoing year-to-year thing. That you started and why you would want to start. It's, I think, the most important thing to consider first. I think there's young adults that want to get even more involved and be on a board. You know, we're constantly talking to people about being on our advisory board. It's not a governing board. It's a community advisory board. Well, what does that mean? Take me up on a cup of coffee sometime and I'll tell you about it. So I think young listeners could plug themselves in right away, but I think they could be plugging in people around them in a huge, big way. I think back to, you know, some of the National Honor Society presidents of these schools, and like Young Leaders in Action was another group. I know that's not a school, but made up of school-age kids. They take the initiative. They take the initiative. You know, my son Grant was National Honor Society president at LSA back in the day. I don't say that because he's my son. I'm saying there was a National Honor Society president who went back to his National Honor Society and said, what do you think? What if we would do this? There's National Honor Society presidents listening right now. There's teacher advisors. There's coaches listening here. We're not just talking to the young adults. We're talking into a connection that you have to impacting the community through the Salvation Army, and an impact that you have to go back to your group and invite them to consider being a part of it. We could hit this thing out of the park together, and we'd love to have that conversation with people.
I think that's what makes it so great here is people are willing to jump in, and there are so many opportunities to get involved. And so I think it's really part of our responsibility to share how to do that and tell people how to get involved and give them the avenues. So I appreciate you being here to share all of that information about the Salvation Army. Do you have anything else you want to plug in?
No, I would just really want to thank you guys. You know, you're picking individuals and organizations and topics that are community impacting, you know, and positive for the community. And for you guys to include Salvation Army, we really appreciate it.
Anytime we know how much you do, we know what your impact is, and so we're always feel so fortunate to help back that and be supportive. So
you guys certainly have been, you know, the invitation here, but you know, you guys as sponsors and your Christmas support, just a huge thank you to Decatur Earth Mover Credit Union again.
Anytime.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for being here, Kyle.
Thanks, Jess.
C'est très jeune, membre.
Good job, guys.
That's a wrap.
Thank you for joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening. And be sure to follow us for more content on our social media channels at Decatur Earth Mover Credit Union.